The chamber was massive, built from crystal that glowed with soft blue light. 7 representatives sat in a circle, each from a different alien species that ruled the galaxy together. They called themselves the Galactic Union, and today they were deciding the fate of humanity. Ambassador Minu stood in the center of the circle. He was a human, the last one allowed to speak for Earth and all its colonies. His hands trembled slightly as he held the data pad containing his final arguments. Around him, the alien representatives watched with eyes that ranged from curious to hostile. Honored members of the Council, Minu began, his voice steady despite his fear. Humanity has been part of the Union for only 50 years. We have followed your laws, we have paid our taxes, we have traded fairly with all species. Why are you doing this? Aura, the representative from the Empire, stood up. She was tall and thin, with skin that shimmered like oil on water. Her voice was cold when she spoke. You ask why? Your species expands too fast. You take resources without asking permission from the proper trade guilds. You solve problems in ways that make others uncomfortable. She pressed a button, and a hologram appeared showing human colonies spreading across multiple star systems. Look at this growth. In 50 years, you have built more colonies than most species build in 500. Minu shook his head. We explored empty systems. We terraformed dead worlds. We didn't take anything from anyone. You didn't follow the established procedures, another council member said. This one was short and round, covered in thick fur. You were supposed to apply for colonization permits. You were supposed to wait for approval. Instead, you just went. The permit process takes decades, Minu argued. Our people needed homes. The worlds we chose were lifeless rocks that nobody wanted. Aura's eyes narrowed. That is exactly the problem. You do not wait. You do not ask. You simply act. This is dangerous behavior. What happens when you decide you want a world that someone else has claimed? What happens when your efficiency conflicts with our established order? Far from the council chamber, on the edge of Union space, Captain received the emergency transmission. He was aboard the Perseverance, a massive colony ship that housed 10,000 humans and served as a mobile base for exploration missions. The message was marked with the highest priority code. All human vessels and stations are to evacuate Union space within 90 standard days. The Council has voted. Humanity is banished beyond the outer veil. Any humans remaining after the deadline will be arrested and their ships confiscated. Read the message 3 times, unable to believe it. Doctor entered the command deck and saw his face. What's wrong? She asked. Was the ship's chief scientist, responsible for studying alien life and technology. She had worked with dozens of alien species and considered many of them friends. Showed her the message. His face went pale. They can't do this, she whispered. We have children in Union schools. We have people married to aliens. We have businesses and homes and... They already did it, interrupted. The vote was 6-1. Only the representative voted to let us stay. The outer veil looked horrified. That region is unexplored. It's considered dead space. Nothing lives out there. The star charts show almost nothing. I know, said quietly. That's where they're sending us. Back in the council chamber, Minu made his final plea. Please reconsider. Humanity can change. We can slow our expansion. We can follow every procedure you require. Just don't force us into exile. The outer veil is a death sentence. Aura's expression didn't change. Then perhaps you should have thought about that before breaking our rules. The vote is final, Ambassador. You have 90 days. What did we really do wrong? Minu demanded, his voice rising. You keep talking about procedures and rules, but what is this really about? Is it because we're different, because we think differently? You are too dangerous, Aura said simply. Your species has a history of violence. Your own planet nearly destroyed itself in wars before you achieved spaceflight. We have records of your nuclear weapons, your biological warfare, your constant conflicts. And even now, when you have the technology to live peacefully, you choose chaos over order. We choose freedom over stagnation, Minyu shot back. We choose action over endless committees. Maybe that's what really scares you. Not that we're dangerous, but that we're successful despite not doing things your way. The chamber fell silent. Finally, Aura spoke again, and this time there was something almost like pity in her voice. The decision is made, Ambassador Minyu. Take your people and go. If you survive out there, perhaps one day your descendants can petition for readmission. But for now, humanity is no longer welcome in civilized space. The next 90 days were chaos. Human ships from across Union space began the long journey to the outer edges. Families were torn apart as some aliens refused to follow their human spouses into exile. Businesses collapsed. Students left their universities mid-semester. Everything humanity had built in Union space was abandoned. Coordinated the evacuation from the Perseverance. Ships of all sizes gathered at the border, forming a massive fleet. There were colony ships like his, filled with families. There were cargo vessels packed with equipment and supplies. There were military escorts, watching nervously for any sign of betrayal. Doctor spent her time downloading every bit of scientific data she could access. We're going to need all the knowledge we can get, she told. Out there beyond the veil, we'll be on our own. On the final day, Ambassador Minyu stood at the observation window of his shuttle as it approached the border. Behind him, the lights of Union civilization glowed bright. Ahead, there was only darkness and unknown stars. They think we'll die out there, he said to his aide. They think we'll come crawling back, begging for mercy. Will we? The aide asked nervously. Minyu smiled, though there was no humor in it. No, we're humans. We survived ice ages and plagues. We survived our own stupidity and countless wars. We'll survive this too. And maybe, just maybe, they'll realize they made a mistake. The fleet crossed the boundary together, thousands of ships moving into unexplored space. On the Union side of the border, Aura watched from her command vessel. Let them face what lurks in the dark, she said to her officers. They will beg to return if they survive at all. But as the human fleet disappeared into the black, something else watched from even deeper in space. Ancient sensors activated after millions of years of sleep. The patterns of movement, the energy signatures, the expansion into new territory, all of it was recorded and analyzed by systems older than any current civilization. And deep in the darkest parts of space, things began to stir. The humans were gone from Union space, exiled and forgotten, but their real test was only beginning. 15 years had passed since the banishment. The human colony of new souls sat on a planet that nobody in the Union had ever wanted. When the first survey teams arrived, they found a world of red sand and thin atmosphere. Now, looking down from orbit, the planet showed patches of green spreading across its surface. Colonel stood in the Defense Command Center, watching the ships move in and out of orbit. She had been just a child when the exile happened, the daughter of Captain. Now she was 25 and in charge of protecting all human settlements in this region. Another mining ship returning from the asteroid belt, reported her assistant. Full load of rare metals. The refineries are working overtime. Nodded. Humanity had learned to thrive out here in the dark. Without union regulations and trade restrictions, they had built faster and more efficiently. 7 colonies now existed where the Union said nothing could survive. New technologies had been developed, things that the Union had called too dangerous or unnecessary. In the research district, Doctor looked much older now, but her mind was as sharp as ever. She stood before a massive holographic display showing an ancient structure that had been discovered on a dead moon. This changes everything, she told the team of scientists gathered around her. These ruins are at least 3 million years old. The civilization that built them was far more advanced than the Union. A young scientist named adjusted his glasses. The interesting part is the technology. Look at these power signatures. They're using energy in ways we've never seen before. Can we adapt it? Asked. Grinned. I already have. The new communications array uses the same principles. We can send messages faster than Union relay networks, and they can't intercept them. Felt a mix of excitement and concern. The Union banned research into precursor technology. They said it was too dangerous. The Union also said we'd all be dead by now, pointed out. Maybe they were wrong about a lot of things. Elsewhere on New Sol, old Captain walked slowly through the gardens. His hair was completely white now, and he needed a cane to support his weight. But his eyes were still alert as he watched children playing. Children who had been born in exile, who had never seen Earth or Union space. A young boy ran up to him. "Grandpa, is it true you were there when the council kicked us out?" Smiled and sat down on a bench. "Yes, I was there. I was captain of the ship that brought your parents to safety." "Were you scared?" "Very scared," admitted. "We didn't know if we could survive out here, but humans are good at surviving. My teacher says the Union thought we would die." They did think that, but they didn't understand something important. Humans are at their best when things are hardest. When we have everything easy, we get soft. When we have to fight to survive, we become strong. At the edge of the system, a scout ship named Swift Arrow moved through empty space. Its pilot was a young woman named, one of the best explorers in the human fleet. Her job was to map unknown regions and look for resources. "This is boring," muttered to herself. 3 weeks and nothing but rocks and dead planets." Her sensor panel suddenly lit up with warnings. Energy signatures, massive ones, were appearing on her screens. Hands moved quickly across the controls, bringing all sensors to full power. "What in the?" she whispered. On her main screen, something huge moved through the darkness. It was the size of a small moon, but it wasn't a natural object. The surface looked like a mix of metal and organic material, constantly shifting and changing. As watched in horror, the thing extended massive tentacles toward a dead planet and began to consume it. The planet crumbled like sand, torn apart and absorbed into the creature's body. The process took less than an hour. When it was done, the creature moved on, heading in a direction that made its blood run cold. It was heading toward Union space. Activated her ship's stealth systems and began recording everything. Her sensors detected more energy signatures in the distance. There were dozens of these creatures, maybe hundreds, all moving in the same direction. She immediately turned her ship around and pushed the engines to maximum speed. This information had to reach New Sol as fast as possible. 2 days later, the Human Council gathered in the main government building. Footage played on the large screen while everyone watched in stunned silence. The creatures, which scientists were already calling devourers, moved through space like living ships. "How many?" asked. He had been called to the meeting despite his age. "We've confirmed at least 50, Colonel reported. But there could be more. They're spread across a wide area, all heading in the same general direction." "Toward the Union," added. She had been studying the footage for hours. "Based on their speed and trajectory, they'll reach the outer Union worlds in about 4 months." The council chamber erupted in arguments. Some people wanted to warn the Union immediately. Others, who still remembered the pain of exile, thought the Union deserved what was coming. "Let them face the consequences of their arrogance," one council member said angrily. "They threw us away like trash. Why should we help them?" "Because billions of innocent people will die," said quietly. His voice was weak, but something in his tone made everyone stop and listen. "The council leaders who exiled us were fools, but the ordinary people, the families, the children, they didn't vote to banish us. Are we going to let them die because their leaders made a mistake?" The chamber fell silent, finally spoke. "Father is right, we have to warn them." "Will they even listen?" someone asked. "They think we're dead or dying, they'll probably think it's a trick." Stood up. "I can send a message through the new communication system. It'll reach Union space in hours instead of weeks. We can include all of recordings as proof." The council voted. It was close, but in the end, they decided to send the warning. Worked through the night, encoding the message and attaching all the data about the Devourers. He included detailed analysis from Doctor's team, trajectory predictions, and recommended defensive strategies. "Message sent," he announced. "Now we wait." The response came 3 days later, but not the one they expected. A Union border patrol had intercepted the message and forwarded it to military command. The official reply was brief and cold. "Message received and logged as suspected human deception. Any further unauthorized communications will be considered an act of aggression. Humanity remains barred from Union space." In the command center, read the message aloud. The room fell silent. "They think we're lying," said in disbelief, "even with all the evidence." "They can't admit we might be right," explained sadly. "If they acknowledge our warning, they have to admit we're still alive and thriving, that we survived what they thought would kill us. Their pride won't allow it." Closed his eyes. "Then billions will die because of stubbornness." "What do we do now?" asked. The old captain looked at his daughter. "We prepare. Those creatures are heading toward Union space, but they'll have to pass through some of our territory to get there. We need to be ready to defend ourselves." "And the Union?" someone asked. His expression was grim. "We gave them a chance to prepare. If they choose to ignore our warning, that's their choice. But when those creatures reach them and the death begins, we need to be ready to make a harder choice." "What choice?" asked, though she already knew the answer. "Whether we go to help them anyway," said. "Even if they don't want our help, even if they still hate us. Because that's what humans do. We save people, even people who hurt us." The council members looked at each other. They had survived 15 years of exile, built a new civilization, and proven the Union wrong about everything. Now they faced a choice that would define what humanity would become. Outside the windows, new Sol's lights glowed in the darkness. Ships moved in orbit, building new stations and preparing defenses. Humanity had carved out a home in the black, and they weren't going to give it up. But somewhere in the dark between stars, the Devourers continued their slow, inevitable approach. Time was running out. The trading world of Nostrum 3 was known throughout the Union for its peaceful markets and beautiful crystal towers. Over 2 billion people lived there, representing dozens of different species. It was a symbol of what the Union had achieved, different beings living together in harmony. On a normal morning, merchants were opening their shops when the sky began to darken, not with clouds but with something else, something massive that blocked out the sun. A devourer had arrived. The creature hung in orbit like a diseased moon. Its surface rippled with strange energy, and massive tentacles extended down toward the planet. The defense satellites activated immediately, firing their weapons at the intruder. The energy beams splashed harmlessly across the creature's hide. The missiles exploded on contact but left no damage. The devourer didn't even seem to notice. Its tentacles touched the planet's surface and began to drain. People ran through the streets screaming. Ships tried to launch, but the creature's energy field disabled their engines. Within an hour, the crystal towers began to crumble. Within 3 hours, the ocean started to boil away. Within 6 hours, Nostrum 3 was a dead, gray ball of rock. The devourer released the planet and moved on to the next system. Behind it, 2 billion lives had been extinguished like candles in the wind. Emergency alarms rang throughout Union space. The council gathered in their crystal chamber, but this time the atmosphere was very different. Fear had replaced arrogance. "How could this happen?" Aura demanded. Where did that thing come from? A military commander stood at attention. We don't know, Speaker. It appeared without warning. All our sensors failed to detect it until it was already in orbit. What about the defense fleet? They're preparing to engage now, Speaker. We've mobilized 7 full battle groups. Aura looked at the other council members. This is clearly connected to that human transmission we received. They must have done something out there in the dark. They've awakened these creatures somehow. But one council member, an elderly being named, shook his head. With respect, Speaker, the humans warned us about this. They tried to help and we ignored them. The humans are exiled, Aura snapped. They have no voice here. They may be exiled, said quietly, but they were right. The Battle of Nebula would be remembered as one of the Union's greatest defeats. 7 full battle groups represented thousands of ships and hundreds of thousands of trained soldiers. They were the pride of Union military might, equipped with weapons that had kept peace for centuries. 3 Devourers had entered the system, moving slowly toward the populated inner planets. The Union fleet surrounded them in the nebula's thick gas clouds, using the gravity wells to trap the creatures. Admiral commanded the operation from his flagship. All ships commence firing. Target the largest creature first. Concentrate all firepower on its central mass. Thousands of energy weapons lit up space. Missiles by the hundreds streaked toward their targets. For a moment, it seemed to work. The Devourer's surface rippled and cracked under the assault. Then the creature adapted. Its hide changed, becoming reflective. The energy beams bounced off harmlessly. The missiles exploded before reaching the surface, intercepted by some kind of energy field that hadn't been there before. Switch to kinetic weapons, ordered. Use rail guns and mass drivers. The physical projectiles worked better. Chunks of the creature's body tore away under the impacts. But even as the Union fleet cheered, they watched in horror as the wounds healed almost instantly. Then the Devourers struck back. A pulse of energy erupted from all 3 creatures simultaneously. It washed over the Union fleet like a wave. Every ship went dark. Power cores shut down. Life support failed. Weapons went offline. 40,000 souls floated helpless in space as the Devourers moved past them toward the inner planets. Some ships had backup systems that activated after a few minutes. They watched helplessly as the creatures destroyed 2 inhabited worlds before finally moving on. The death toll was in the billions. In human space, Colonel watched the long-range scanners with growing horror. The tactical display showed Union fleet positions going dark one by one. They're losing, she said quietly. The Union military is being destroyed. Her tactical officer, a young man named, studied the data flowing in from their spy sensors. The creatures learn from every attack. They adapt in real time. The Union keeps using the same energy-based weapons, so the Devourers keep developing defenses against them. What would work? Asked. Pulled up several files. These technologies, the ones the Union banned when we were members, kinetic weapons, nuclear warheads, electromagnetic pulse generators, chemical explosives, they called them primitive and barbaric. But we kept developing them, said. We did, because we knew that sometimes the old ways work when the fancy ways fail. Doctor entered the command center, moving quickly despite her age. We just received a transmission. It's not from the Council. It's from a Union ship that crossed into our territory. They're invading? Asked. No, said. They're asking for help. The ship was barely functioning, its hull by battle damage. It limped into New Sol's orbit and requested emergency docking. Authorized it personally. The captain was a young woman named. She stumbled off her ship, exhausted and traumatized. My fleet was destroyed, she said. 40 ships reduced to nothing in minutes. I'm the only survivor. Brought her to the command center and gave her water. Why did you come here? The Union still considers us exiled. laughed bitterly. The council does, yes, but many of us remember humans. We remember how you solved problems, how you thought differently. She pulled out a data chip. I carry a message from lower-ranking officers throughout the fleet. They're begging you to help. The council rejected our warning, pointed out. The council is filled with fools, said bluntly. But the billions of innocent people dying right now are not fools. They're just victims of their leader's pride. Looked at the data chip, then at end. Call a meeting, full council. We need to decide this now. The debate lasted 3 hours. The council chamber was packed with citizens who wanted their voices heard. Some argued that the Union deserved its fate. Others insisted that helping was the right thing to do. Finally, asked to speak. The old captain looked tiny and frail as he stood, but his voice carried through the chamber. When I was young, he said, I served in Earth's military. We had a saying, leave no one behind. It didn't matter if they liked you or not. It didn't matter if they had wronged you. When someone needed help, you helped them. He paused, catching his breath. The Union cast us out. They called us dangerous and uncivilized. They sent us to die in the dark, but we didn't die. We thrived. We built new homes and new lives, and now they need us. Why should we risk our lives for them? Someone shouted from the crowd. Turned slowly to face the speaker. Because if we don't, we become exactly what they accused us of being. They said we were too dangerous. They said we only knew violence. Let's prove them wrong. Let's show them that humans help people who need help, even people who hurt us. The vote was close, but it passed. Humanity would go to war. Immediately began preparations. Every combat-capable ship was called up. Every weapon system was checked and loaded. The fleet that assembled over New Sol was smaller than the Union's grand armadas, but it bristled with weapons that no Union ship would carry. Was given command of an experimental ship called the Retribution. It was fast and carried a mix of old and new weapons. We're really doing this, he asked. We're really doing this, she confirmed. The question is whether we're doing it because we're stupid or because we're good people. Can it be both? Grinned. Spent the hours before departure reviewing all data on the Devourers. She identified a potential weakness in their adaptive systems. If they kept changing attack methods rapidly, the creatures might not be able to adapt fast enough. As the human fleet prepared to leave, watched from the observation deck, tears ran down her face as she saw ships that were older and smaller than Union vessels preparing to fight for people who had rejected them. Why, she asked, who stood beside her, why are you doing this? Thought about her answer for a moment. Because my father taught me that being human means helping people, not just people who like us, all people, even the ones who hurt us, maybe especially them. The fleet launched, heading toward the border and the war beyond. Behind them, the lights of New Sol glowed in the darkness. Ahead, the Devourers continued their terrible harvest. And in Union space, billions waited unknowingly for salvation from the people they had thrown away. The human fleet crossed the border into Union space without permission. Admiral stood on the bridge of her flagship, watching the coordinates change on the display. 15 years ago, humans had been forced out of this territory. Now they were returning as warriors. All ships report ready. His voice came through the communication system. He commanded a squadron of fast attack ships. We're picking up Union patrol signals ahead. Hold formation, ordered. Let them see us clearly. I don't want any misunderstandings. The Union patrol consisted of 5 ships. Their commander, an officer, couldn't believe what his sensors were showing. Dozens of human vessels, fully armed and heading deeper into Union territory. Unknown human fleet, you are in violation of Union law, he transmitted. Turn back immediately or we will open fire. Opened a channel. Union Patrol, this is Admiral of the Human Defense Forces. We're here to help fight the Devourers. Stand down. There was a long pause. Then, you're exiled. You have no authority here. The Devourers don't care about our exile, replied. They're killing everyone. We have weapons and tactics that can hurt them. Let us pass, or billions more will die while you're stopping us. The Union commander was young and uncertain. His orders said to shoot any human ships on sight, but he had also heard the reports from the front lines. The Union was losing badly. I'm ordering my ships to stand down, he finally said. But I'm reporting this to command. They'll send someone to deal with you. They can deal with us after we save their lives, said. The human fleet moved deeper into Union space. Everywhere they went, Union ships watched in confusion and anger. Some wanted to attack. Others remembered the old days when humans had been allies. Captain, the officer who had brought the plea for help, served as a liaison. She helped navigate Union protocols and prevented several potential conflicts. Many Union officers are grateful you're here, she told, but the Council is furious. They're sending a battle group to force you to leave. Let them try, said. First, we have work to do. The first engagement happened in the system. 4 Devourers were consuming a mining colony while the local defense fleet watched helplessly. Their weapons had proven useless, and they were preparing to evacuate when the human fleet arrived. All ships attack Pattern Delta, ordered. Remember the training, keep changing tactics, don't let them adapt. The human ships split into small groups, each attacking from a different angle. Squadron went in first, firing old-fashioned rail guns. Heavy metal slugs slammed into the nearest Devourer at incredible speed. The creature's hide cracked and tore. Before it could adapt, another squadron hit it with electromagnetic pulse weapons. The creature convulsed as electricity coursed through its body. Then another group fired missiles with nuclear warheads. The explosions tore huge chunks from the Devourer's mass. It's healing, someone reported. Then we hit it again before it's done healing, ordered. All ships, concentrate fire on the damaged one. Kill it before it adapts. The human fleet poured everything they had into the wounded Devourer. Kinetic weapons, energy beams, chemical explosives, and more. The creature tried to change, tried to defend itself, but the attacks kept coming from different directions using different methods. Finally, with a burst of strange energy, the Devourer collapsed in on itself and died. For the first time since the crisis began, a Devourer had been killed. The Union ships watching couldn't believe it. They did it, whispered. The humans actually killed one. But the celebration was brief. 3 more Devourers remained, and they had learned from their companion's death. They became more aggressive, attacking the human ships directly. Ship, the Retribution, took a direct hit from a Devourer's tentacle. The impact tore through the hull, venting atmosphere and knocking out half the systems. Hull breach on decks 3 and 4, his crew reported. Life support failing. Seal the damaged sections, ordered, struggling to stay calm. Redirect power to engines, we need to stay mobile. Another human ship moved in to protect the damaged Retribution, drawing the Devourer's attention. The sacrifice gave time to execute a desperate plan. All power to forward weapons, he ordered, and prepare emergency escape pods. Sir, if we do that, we won't have power for shields or engines, his second officer protested. I know, said grimly. Get everyone to the pods except essential crew, we're going in. The Retribution accelerated straight toward the Devourer's open maw. The creature, seeing easy prey, opened wider to consume the ship. At the last second, fired everything. Nuclear missiles, electromagnetic bombs, and chemical explosives packed into the front of the ship. Eject, 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 he screamed. Escape pods shot out from the Retribution as it plunged into the Devourer. The ship disappeared into the creature's body. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the Devourer exploded from within. The internal detonation tore it apart before it could heal or adapt. Debris rained across the system. Watched the explosion from her flagship, her heart in her throat. Get rescue teams to those escape pods now." The pods were recovered, had survived though his ship was gone. As medical teams treated him, he grinned weakly at, "I always wanted to try that tactic. Glad it worked." "You're insane," said, but she was smiling. The battle continued. 2 devourers remained, and now they were retreating. The human fleet pursued carefully, not letting them escape but not getting too close either. Doctor, monitoring from a science vessel, studied the creatures' behavior. "They're learning to fear us," she said with satisfaction. "They've never encountered prey that fights back like this." The remaining 2 devourers were destroyed over the next several hours. It took every ship and every weapon the human fleet had, but they won. As the last devourer died, the Union defense fleet that had been watching finally sent a message. "Human vessels, this is Commander of the Union Defense Forces. On behalf of my crew, I thank you." Other messages followed, grateful transmissions from Union ships and stations throughout the system. The humans had done what the Union's mighty fleets could not. They had stopped the devourers. But the celebration was short-lived. New sensor readings showed a horrifying truth. More devourers were coming. Dozens of them, maybe hundreds. "The ones we fought were just scouts," said quietly. "The main force is still approaching." Looked at her fleet. Many ships were damaged. Supplies were running low. They had won this battle, but could they win a war? A priority transmission came through. It was from Aura herself, the council speaker who had ordered humanity's exile. Her image appeared on the main screen, and she looked older and more tired than remembered. "Admiral," Aura said formally, "the council acknowledges your actions in the system. We also acknowledge that we were wrong to ignore your warning." She paused, and the words seemed to cause her physical pain. "We need your help. The Union cannot defeat these creatures alone." Could have been petty. She could have reminded Aura of the exile, of the billions of humans forced to leave their homes, of 15 years of struggle in the dark. But she didn't. "We're already here," said simply. "Tell us where you need us." Aura's expression showed surprise, then something like respect. "The main devourer force will reach the core systems in 2 weeks. We're evacuating civilian populations and fortifying our defenses. Your tactics have been shared with all Union fleets. They're retrofitting their ships with kinetic weapons now." "Good," said, "but it won't be enough. We need to find where these things come from and stop them at the source." "We don't know where they come from," Aura admitted. "Then we'll figure it out," replied. "That's what humans do." After the transmission ended, approached. The council speaker never apologizes, never admits mistakes. What you just witnessed is historic. "I don't care about historic," said. "I care about stopping those things before everyone dies. Human, Union, doesn't matter. We're all in this together now." Bandaged but mobile joined them. "So what's the plan, Admiral?" Looked at the tactical display showing the approaching devourers. "We need to understand what they are and what they want. Doctor thinks there might be answers in those precursor ruins we found." "The ancient structures?" asked. "The Union banned research into precursor technology." "The Union also said humans would die in exile," pointed out. "Maybe it's time to stop following Union wisdom and start thinking for ourselves." The fleet began preparing for the next phase. Ships were repaired, weapons were reloaded, and Doctor assembled a team to dive deep into the ancient mysteries that might hold the key to survival. Time was running out, and the real war was only beginning. 3 weeks had passed since the first victory against the Devourers. The war was not going well. Every day brought news of more worlds destroyed, more fleets annihilated. Union space was shrinking as planets were evacuated and entire systems abandoned. Doctor worked around the clock in her laboratory, surrounded by artifacts from the ancient precursor ruins. She looked exhausted, but her eyes burned with discovery. "I found it," she announced to the assembled team. "I know what the Devourers are." Admiral, captain, and representatives from both human and Union forces gathered around the holographic display, brought up images of the ancient structures. The precursor civilization was incredibly advanced, she began, but they made a terrible mistake. They expanded too fast, consumed too many resources, and nearly destroyed their galaxy. So they created a. The Devourers said. Nodded. They're not invaders from outside. They're guardians from the past. The precursors programmed them to activate if any civilization expanded beyond a certain threshold. They're designed to stop unchecked growth before it becomes unstoppable. The Union triggered them, said quietly. Our expansion activated an ancient security system. Exactly, confirmed. And there's more. The Union ignored warning beacons scattered throughout space, ancient messages telling people to slow down, to be careful, but the Union couldn't read them. Their linguistic patterns couldn't decode the precursor language. But humans could have, asked. Maybe, said. Human languages evolved differently. We have more variety, more pattern recognition skills. If we had been allowed to study those beacons instead of being exiled, we might have understood the warnings. The room fell silent. The Union's arrogance had doomed billions. Can we stop them? Asked. Is there a way to shut down the Devourers? Brought up new data. There's a control station. The precursors called it the Nexus. It's located deep in Devourer territory, hidden in a dying star system. If we can reach it, we might be able to deactivate the Guardians. Might emphasized. The system is sophisticated, admitted. It won't just turn off because we ask nicely. It needs to be convinced that sentient life has learned its lesson, that we won't repeat the precursor's mistakes. A Union admiral spoke up. How do we convince an ancient computer that we've learned anything? Smiled sadly. We show it evidence, data from civilizations that chose sustainability over growth, societies that limited their expansion voluntarily. She paused, like humanity did during our exile. Understanding dawned on's face. We were forced out, but we could have pushed back into Union space at any time. We didn't. We built sustainable colonies and lived within our means. Exactly, said. Humanity's exile might be the key to saving everyone. The plan was approved quickly. A joint human-Union strike force would fight through the Devourer swarm to reach the Nexus. Every species in the Union contributed their best ship and crew. It would be the most dangerous mission in galactic history. Aura requested a private meeting with Old Captain. The ancient human agreed, though he could barely walk now. They met in a quiet room aboard the human flagship. I owe you an apology, Aura said without preamble. 15 years ago, I led the vote to exile your people. I was wrong. Studied her for a long moment. Why did you really do it? The official reasons never made sense. Aura sat down heavily. Fear, she admitted. Humanity was different. You solved problems in ways we couldn't understand. You adapted faster than any species we'd ever seen. I was afraid that if we let you continue, you would surpass us, so I convinced the council to get rid of you. You were afraid we'd be better than you, said. Yes, Aura looked at her hands, and I was right to fear your potential, but I was wrong about what that meant. Your differences could have helped us. Instead, my pride pushed away the one species that might have prevented this catastrophe. We would have read those warning beacons, said. If we'd been allowed to study precursor technology, we would have understood. I know, Aura whispered. Billions have died because of my mistake. How do I live with that? Was quiet for a moment. Then, you live by making sure it means something. Help us now. Support the mission. And when this is over, make sure no species is ever exiled again because they're different. Aura nodded, tears in her eyes. If we survive this, I promise you that the Union will change. The strike force assembled near the border of Devourer territory. 50 ships, half human and half Union, prepared for the mission. Admiral commanded the operation with Captain leading the human contingent. Doctor was aboard the science vessel, ready to interface with the Nexus if they reached it. She carried with her all the data on humanity's exile, their sustainable colonies, and their voluntary limits on expansion. All ships report ready, transmitted. Let's go save the galaxy. The journey into Devourer territory was a nightmare. The creatures swarmed around them like angry insects. The fleet fought constantly, using every tactic and weapon they had developed. Ships were lost one by one, but the survivors pushed forward. On the fifth day, they entered the dying star system. The star was collapsing, its light dim and red. In its shadow sat the Nexus, a massive station built by hands that had been dust for millions of years. "We've got dozens of devourers converging on our position," the sensor officer reported. "We won't have much time." "All ships defensive formation," ordered. "Buy us as much time as you can. The landing team is going in." Led a small group into the Nexus. The interior was dark and cold, but systems activated as they entered. Ancient mechanisms recognized the presence of sentient life. Doctor moved to the main control interface. Strange symbols appeared on screens that hadn't been used in eons. "This is it," she said. "The control system for the Devourers." "Can you turn it off?" asked. "It's not that simple," said, her fingers moving over the controls. "The system is asking questions. It wants to know if we've learned the lesson." Outside, the fleet was being torn apart. Ships exploded as Devourers overwhelmed their defenses. Watched her forces dwindle, knowing that every second they bought might be the difference between success and extinction. Inside the Nexus, uploaded all the data she had brought. Records of humanity's exile, images of their sustainable colonies, evidence that sentient beings could choose limits voluntarily. The ancient system processed the information for what felt like hours but was only seconds. Then new symbols appeared. "It's asking about current actions," translated. "It wants to know if we're here to destroy it or to learn from it." "What do we tell it?" asked. Thought of all the people who had died, all the worlds destroyed, all the pain caused by pride and arrogance. "We tell it the truth. We're here because we finally understand. Growth without wisdom leads to destruction. Power without restraint brings death." She entered the response, her hands shaking. The system hummed, processing their answer against millions of years of programming. Then, one by one, the Devourers stopped moving. On the Fleet Command channel heard reports from all ships. "They're shutting down. The Devourers are going dormant." Across the galaxy, the massive creatures ceased their attacks. Some dissolved into energy. Others retreated into deep space, returning to the dark places where they had slept for eons. The war was over. The return journey was bittersweet. They had saved the galaxy, but at a terrible cost. Half the strike force had been lost. Billions had died before they stopped the threat. On New Sol lay in his bed, too weak to rise but alert enough to receive visitors. Sat beside him, holding his hand. "We did it, Father," she said softly. "We saved them." Smiled. "Of course we did. That's what humans do." He coughed weakly. "What happens now?" "The Council is being reformed. 8 species now instead of 7. They've asked me to be humanity's representative." "Will you accept?" "I don't know," admitted. "After everything they did to us, can we really trust them?" Squeezed her hand with what little strength he had left. "Trust isn't given, it's built. They need to earn it, but you need to give them the chance. Otherwise, what was it all for?" A priority communication came through. Aura's image appeared on the screen. "Admiral, the Council has voted unanimously. We're offering to terraform Earth back to its original state, to bring humanity home." Looked at the screen, then at his daughter. He spoke, his voice barely a whisper. "Home isn't a place we left behind. It's what we built together in the dark when everyone gave up on us. But thank you for finally understanding why we didn't give up on you." Aura bowed her head. "We have much to learn from humanity, Perhaps that was the real lesson all along. As the transmission ended, closed his eyes. "Promise me something," he said too. "Anything, Father. Promise me you'll make sure no one is ever exiled again. That differences are celebrated, not feared." "I promise," said through her tears. Smiled one last time and was gone. 6 months later, the new council met for the first time. 8 species sat in the chamber, and humanity's seat had veto power over any decision to expel members. New laws protected diversity and encouraged different approaches to problems. Captain received the Union's highest honor for his actions during the war. He accepted it on behalf of all humans who had survived the exile and fought to save those who had wronged them. Doctor published her findings on precursor technology, and it became required reading for all Union scientists. Future generations would study the ancient warnings and remember the cost of ignoring them. Admiral stood on the observation deck of New Seoul, watching ships from dozens of species moving peacefully through orbit. Human and Union vessels patrolled together, protecting what they had built. A young officer approached her. "Admiral, the ambassadors from the new colonies are arriving for the conference." Nodded. "Tell them we'll meet them in an hour. I need a moment." Alone, she looked out at the stars. Humanity had been cast out, had survived against impossible odds, and had returned not as conquerors but as saviors. They had proven that being different wasn't dangerous, it was essential. Somewhere in the deep dark, the Devourers slept again, waiting, watching, ready to activate if the galaxy species forgot the lesson they had learned. But believed they wouldn't forget. The Union had changed. Humanity had shown them a better way. And in the end, that was what came next. Not revenge, not pride, but a future built together by species who had learned that their differences made them stronger. The stars shone bright, and humanity's place among them was finally secure.